So we were talking about kind of new modes of research, and it occurs to me we actually saw this a little bit last year. Even at an organization like the Southern Historical Association, the presidential address last year used, in a preliminary fashion, many of these kind of data mining techniques and looking at Google Ngrams and those sorts of things, which are, increasingly popular. I heard a lecture yesterday by Carol Reardon talking about, the famous phrase, a sword in one hand and Jomini in the other, recognizing that her use of these sorts of methods actually worked out that phrase is originated around about World War II,
right.
That in fact it has nothing to do whatsoever with the Civil War. So it's really interesting possibilities that scholars are coming up with to use these sorts of tools in order to complicate some of the things that we thought we knew.
Right. Yeah. And I think in some ways, part of what we're doing is asking questions we've asked before, but we're able to answer those questions in a much more rapid way, right? I mean, before we could have gone through every newspaper and identified every phrase that looked like it might relate to the topic that we're looking on, and we could have categorized them, we could have looked for, historians have done that.
Right.
But the entry level to begin to collate and collect and analyze data is just available to us in a way that it never has been before. But I also think that there are opportunities for detailing things that we wouldn't have been able to do before, right? I think that the power of some of the network analysis that's being done, to try to recreate. So Elaine Parsons is doing this really great work, recreating social networks of people who are involved in various social movements, including the KKK, and figuring out how these people are connected to each other, and able to do so, and not just to do that, but then to represent it in a variety of ways visually that make clear these patterns in ways that we just weren't able to do that before. And the mapping tools that are available now. I mean, GIS is the most commonly known one, but you could even use Google Maps or Google Earth to do some of these things. So I'm thinking of Will Thomas's work with railroads and the Freedmen's Bureau labor contracts and mapping out, looking at these patterns that run along rail lines and how they differ depending on which part of the rail line you're on. And Rubin's work, really creative work, I think, in mapping Sherman's march, not just in the historical or geographic sense, but also in a literary sense and in terms of people's memory, right? And having layers of maps that allow you to see not just not just the actual path of Sherman's march, but a perspective on the way people perceived that march. So I think we're seeing new things, new insights.
Do you think that in a way we're in a moment where scholars' ingenuity and originality in using a lot of these tools and a lot of this new data has actually outstripped our ability to present them in kind of conventional forms? The book, the scholarly article, the conference presentation. I mean, those are almost 19th century modes of representation of scholarly communication.
Yeah, I do think that's what's going on here. I do think that I think we're going to continue to write books. We're going to continue to write articles. We're going to continue to have scholarly presentations at conferences. But I also think that we need to be more creative about what constitutes scholarly production, right? And one of the ways, we have all kinds of amazing digital projects that I think that offer us new ways of both sort of showing work in progress and showing one's sources, while also conveying information in a way that a static words on the page, or even just an oral presentation of a paper simply cannot convey, right? And there are lots of advantages to that, I think. I think it allows us to engage others in conversations about that work, sometimes in progress, which is something that, other than the conference paper, historians have been reluctant to share their work in progress. But I think one of the advantages of sharing that work in progress is that not only are you making it accessible to others, but you provide opportunities for truly interactive conversations. I think one project that does this really well is the Visualizing Emancipation project that Scott Nesbitt and Ed Ayers and a number of students at the University of Richmond have been working on. I mean, they've created a resource that others can use, but also provided a basis for, I think, from the preliminary stuff that we've seen from Ed and Scott, the basis for some really revolutionary thoughts about the end of slavery.
And I think that provides an interesting segue between kind of the research and the scholarship and the communication, because I think what we're also seeing, and have been seeing for probably a little while now, is different media, the internet in particular, but that's not the only one, but different media that scholars are using to get their messages across, and getting their messages across to perhaps different audiences than would come to a conference like the Southern and would sit and listen to a paper. Even the best, most well-attended panel at a conference like this might have 200, 300 people in it. Maybe the presidential address has more, but most of the panels are gonna not reach more than that. And then the question becomes, how do those conversations continue, or can those conversations continue in productive ways outside of those venues?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we're clearly seeing is a revolution in scholarly communication itself, right? And that can take a variety of forms, whether it's continuing to engage with each other through social media like Twitter and Facebook, or through blogging. Online publishing has come an incredibly long way, and it's possible to put stuff online that doesn't have a 2-year wait process to be published, right? Now, there are issues that we can talk about in terms of vetting that material and talking about that material and peer review, but the notion of reaching out to a scholarly community but also at the same time engaging a larger audience beyond that scholarly community, I think is incredibly important in this day and age when we are bombarded with questions about the relevance of the humanities and questions of the relevance of history in particular. I think we do have some responsibility in thinking about how to reach out to a larger community. I think Karen Cox has been blogging about the South and popular culture, and I think that's a good example for us of how you can do both of those things: engage in scholarly communication, but also reach out to and engage in a wider public audience.